Welcome to the beginning of the Mario Kart World monthly world record review. Like the similar series of the same name created for Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, this video series is designed to recap every world record set in Mario Kart World over the past month. I figured that now would be a better time than ever to start such a series for Mario Kart World, as the game has been out for over a year now, and improvements are more nuanced and interesting than any other point thus far in the game's history. This June, a grand total of 39 world records were set across 17 unique courses. Without any further ado, let's get right into recapping the runs. We start this month at Acorn Heights, where, on June 2nd, American player Demon improved his own world record by 29 milliseconds to set the first sub-157 time, with a 156.986. Demon has been involved with pushing this track for a while now, and it's incredible to see the second barrier broken almost exactly 1 year into Mario Kart World's lifespan. There are three main portions of the track that I want to highlight as more critical sources of time gain and loss. The first is the beginning sequence with the double trick off the rail into the glider, which is also the newest strategy implemented by Demon starting in his 157.186 set on May 18th. This strategy is similar to recent developments on tracks like Wario Stadium, which also does a double trick off the second rail in the most recent world records. The idea here is similar to external velocity with outside drift in Mario Kart Wii or Kusan sliding in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, where the bike gains extra velocity in the lateral direction. This velocity gets capped when moving directly forwards, but if we can position the bike in such a way that progressing forward on the track involves turning to either the left or right, then rolling to that direction allows the bike to travel faster than simply driving forwards. I don't know all the specifics about how the double roll magnifies the effect compared to a single roll, but through the examples we have both here and on Wario Stadium, there definitely seems to be some extra speed that the double roll provides. Moving just past the glider is the next point of interest, which is the wall detach into tricking off the edge of this leaf. Getting this maneuver in the exact way the world record does is far from trivial, even though it's not incredibly difficult to get a wall detach period. Minimizing the amount of airtime while maintaining the tight line that Demon does is key to squeezing the most time out of this spot. Getting the detach with this lower height and angle also makes it so that Demon lands nearly right on the edge of the leaf, letting the line and speed from the airtime do the heavy lifting. I also saw in some comments that Demon made in the time trial server that the timing of the trick boost when landing from this leaf is also crucial in order to get a boosted trick off the subsequent ramp on laps 2 and 3, with there not being much margin to make it off the ramp with the boost still active. Boosting airtime is a very important concept in Mario Kart World time trials especially, and it's something that can easily go overlooked, so I'm glad Demon highlighted this ramp when discussing a new strat idea in the time trial server. The last major thing to point out is the evolution of the shroomless cut. Demon's run clips the inside wall on all 3 laps, getting a boost each time from the detach. Most players, including myself, prefer the version which avoids this wall entirely, landing on the opposite wall, much closer to the Nisk entry. However, as previously mentioned, the detach seems to give a slight boost, while also enabling a more direct line through the cut, hence clearly being the faster method. Additionally, the length of the trick boost afterward really doesn't matter, as the first tree route is located very close to the landing spot, so getting the shortest boost length doesn't lose any time compared to the older methods since, as previously mentioned, we just need to make sure that the bike is boosted at all when going airborne. Before wrapping up completely, I did want to mention that I also saw some comments from Demon hypothesizing a 1-2-0 shroom strategy for this track to possibly be done at some point in the future, since the shroom on lap 3 doesn't get 100% of its possible value due to crossing the finish line before the full effect of the boost expires. I do not believe much progress has been made on a strategy change of that kind as of yet, but it's something to keep in mind for potential future improvements here. As it stands right now, the best known splits give a time of 156.796, so while it is possible for this record to go lower with the current strategies, it's more likely that a new discovery will trigger a new push here. Congratulations Demon on your record here this month. Heading south to Moo Moo Meadows, on June 2nd, British player Spezzy improved his own world record by 98 milliseconds to set a time of 153.309. Spezzy comments that, at this point, the start of the run matters the most. He believes that the main sources of time loss land within the first 30 seconds, and that future world records will simply need to execute there and then match the 309 for the rest of the run. When asking him a little bit more about the time loss, Spezzy said that the main places to look would be the 2 cow bounces in the lap. The first one Spezzy chalks up to, quote, human RNG, which he says is, quote, just his excuse for being bad. He added that it was one of the worst bounces that he would accept and continue a run with, but if he were actively grinding to push the world record down more now, then he would likely reset on that bounce provided he still wasn't ahead after the first 10 seconds. However, Spezzy specified that the second cow bounce is much more complex, especially at world record level. Spezzy says that the bounce itself is actually fine, but it's the line afterwards of the off-road which has a significant impact on how much time is gained or lost in this area. The line from this particular bounce forced Spezzy to take a wider line when tricking off the road and onto the wooden ramp, which in Spezzy's eyes lost slightly over 0.1. A better line would hug the wooden wall a bit tighter when exiting the trick. The fact that Spezzy is able to cite this line as a source of time loss at all comes from the fact that he did hours of testing in this spot when German player Kinso had the world record here, as Spezzy wanted to learn for himself how Kinso was able to save so much time over everyone else here. Spezzy's efforts here also led him to implementing an extra air trick after bouncing off the cow, which Spezzy says is slightly faster than not doing so, and is also inspired by a similar strat he added on Bones Burnout back in September of last year. Adding in this extra air trick is a great example of how learning and mastering multiple courses can feed into each other. Starting to learn a new track after mastering another one can open up a completely new lens through which you can examine a course, and often leads to new innovations that make their ways into future world records. Spezzy says that his current goal for Moo Moo Meadows sits in the 153.1 to 153.0 range, with his planned activity being on and off whenever he feels like, since he has other goals on other tracks that he's been putting more of a spotlight on instead. The best known splits for this course currently give a time of 152.948, which leaves plenty of breathing room for Spezzy's goal of a 53.1 or a 53.0. Moo Moo Meadows feels like a gift that keeps on giving. It's an incredible track to watch at world record level in my opinion, especially in regards to the strat developments here over the past year. I still find it hard to believe that the tree shortcut is done shroomless 3 for 3, and that the better shroom spots are bypassing the second cow bounce on laps 2 and 3, as well as shrooming at the ending disc on lap 3 for a better line into the finish. Not to mention things like the first rail ride into cow bounce and then adding in the Yuki roll on laps 2 and 3 even later, which is one of the most bizarre pieces of tech that we've seen thus far in this game, which adds to how awesome the strategy is. Moo Moo Meadows requires its players to have a deep understanding of Mario Kart World's mechanics in a way that not many tracks in the game do, and Spezzy has clearly demonstrated that he possesses such an understanding with his efforts here. Congratulations on your world record here this month, and good luck with your future attempts. The next track to see an improvement this month is Dandelion Depths, where American player Jack improved his own world record 5 times. On June 4th, Jack set a 2:17.893, a 60 millisecond improvement over his previous world record. 2 days later, Jack improved by a modest 19 milliseconds down to a 2:17.874. 3 days after that, Jack set another modest improvement of 27 milliseconds, bringing the record down to a 2:17.847. Another 3 days after that, on June 12th, Jack would improve by a more sizable 58 milliseconds, setting the first 2:17.7 time with a 2:17.789. Finally, right before the end of June, Jack improved by another 58 milliseconds to a 2:17.731 on June 30th. Jack says that his runs mainly come down to the buoy tricks towards the end of the cave. According to Jack, you can get any of 5 variants. First, normal buoy, which gets a trick early but no speed boost. Second, trickless buoy, which Jack says is just, quote, pain and slow. Third, a crazy good angle, which gives a tighter turn. Fourth, a cone trick, which is only useful for taking the right path. And fifth, quote, super buoy, which is, in the words of Jack, quote, getting a speed boost tricking as late as possible into a smooth, tight drift, barely touching the wall for left path. Jack tries to get 1 cone trick and 2 super buoys in his runs. Even from a spectator standpoint on this track, I can see why this would be optimal. The right path contains 2 coins that the world record picks up, and not having them for laps 2 and 3 on a lap as long as Dandelion Depths would be quite slow. So getting 1 cone trick to take the right path, and then 2 super buoys to take the left path makes sense as the dominant strategy here. Jack says that the one he gets in the lap 2 of his 789 is a pretty good example of super buoy, although he's gotten some better ones in some best known split clips. The 2 other spots Jack wants to point out for his 789 are the first 12 seconds as well as the landing from the pole trick on laps 2 and 3. He says he is routinely able to off-screen his ghost with a really good start after the first 12 seconds, which is right at the charge jump before grabbing the first 2 coins. He also says that he won't be able to mentally move on until he fixes that mistake. After driving his 731, I asked if his goals had changed at all, to which he replied that he's still looking for something better, since according to him lap 1 could have had tighter lines, and lap 2 had a normal buoy. I also asked if the beginning sequence gets easier with time, but Jack answered that he still finds it pretty hard, especially moving into laps 2 and 3, since the coin count makes a difference each time for the tricks and mini turbo releases. As for the pole trick at the beginning of laps 2 and 3, Jack notes that the exit from the lap 2 pole is poor, but the exit from the lap 3 pole is good. Jack adds that the main deciding factor is the amount of airtime obtained off the pole, doing the left trick as soon as possible and holding slight right immediately afterwards for maximal airtime. Getting this much air results in less dirt being hit upon landing, hence being faster. I really appreciate Jack pointing out this little detail. While Dandelion Depths and other tracks in this game have their bigger, flashier strategies, many of them also contain lots of little points of interest like this pole landing as well. Paying attention to that detail specifically when watching various world records on this track really helps train your eye to identify when a landing is good as opposed to when it's not, and it's the same across all the other small strategies over the rest of the game. Let's shine some light on Jack's other improvements this month before moving on. As usual with this course, the driving in the 893, 874, and 847 is solid all around. I particularly want to highlight the opening spiral, as with each run you can see how Jack gets more comfortable and confident with taking the tightest line, despite it still being rather difficult. Any corrections that need to be made are made more decisively in the more recent runs, and spirals that don't need to be corrected are as tight as possible. It's worth noting that the 893 got a trickless buoy on lap 2, costing Jack a much stronger run right out of the gate. The lap 1 on the 874 is a bit slow compared to the rest of the runs, but Jack still drove a very solid lap 2 and 3 in order to close out the improvement. As for the 847, Jack clips the little lip of the road surface after landing in the water from the path switch, losing a bit of time and making the lap 2 in this run worse than the 874. However, Jack's lap 3 in his 847 is a monster lap, and the best lap 3 out of these 4 records. The 731 implements a new strategy on lap 3, which involves charge jumping into the pillars after the spiral. Jack doesn't know how much time the strategy saves yet, as this was the first lap 3 that he feels he drove cleanly. The 731 is also, apparently, the first record Jack set using the Switch 2 Pro controller, which is absolutely wild to think about. He says he prefers the controller to the Joy-Cons, so we'll see if that increases the rate at which he can set new times here. Jack says that his long-term goal here is a 217.6, which is difficult but doable. The best-known splits, spoiler alert, did total to a 217.519 when taking the right path first, and a 217.536 when taking the left path first. But strategy changes made right at the beginning of July have driven those down significantly, so stay tuned for next month's video when we'll recap the continued activity on this course. Congratulations on your records this month, Jack, and good luck with your future endeavors here. Next up this month is Cheep Falls, where I improved my own world record twice. First, on June 4th, I drove a 154.001, a 157 millisecond improvement over my previous world record, and just 2 milliseconds off the first sub 154. A week and a half later, on June 15th, I hit a run that improved the record by another 120 milliseconds, resulting in a 153.881 and the first 153 on this track. Let's first discuss the 154.001. This run came out of nowhere for me, as I still wasn't incredibly consistent at hitting fast lap 1s and lap 2s. This sentiment holds for this run, as lap 1 is a decent 38.951, and lap 2 is a subpar 37.620. This run only improved by such a large margin because I clutched up on lap 3 and drove a new best known split with a 37.430. I actually couldn't stop laughing when I saw the ending time, as in a way I saw it as only fitting to just barely miss out on such a huge milestone for the course. I want to turn your attention to the rail strategy at the bridge. This run optimally executes the whole strategy by going for the wider coin on lap 1 and then the tight coin on lap 2. These coins must be collected in this order, since grabbing the wide coin requires waiting to start your drift for the next turn until landing from the stairs. Starting the drift at this point forces the vehicle into a wider line, which is fine on lap 1 since that wider line happens to fall right along the next 3 coins on the track. But the coins aren't there on lap 2 or 3, making it a run killer if done out of order. Unfortunately, it's quite easy to grab the coins out of order, since the trick timing for lap 1 compared to laps 2 and 3 is only a frame or 2 earlier, and the window for lap 1 feels frame perfect, unlike laps 2 and 3, which feels closer to a 2 or 3 frame window. This is by far the biggest reset point on the track now, and I failed numerous paces to getting a wide line off the rail on lap 3. Ultimately though, I'm glad I was able to secure a run with the correct implementation of the strategy as a good reference going forward. Moving on to the 153.881, this run does not get the wide coin on the bridge on lap 1, forcing all 3 laps to take the tight line, as we discussed already why I can't simply reverse the order of the coins. Taking the tighter line on lap 1 makes it easy to lock in a very fast lap 1, which this one is at a 38.837. Lap 2 is right on target with what I was aiming for a sub pace, clocking in at a 37.555. and lap 3 was another great lap at 37.489. This run is very good, if I do say so myself. It's not perfect, and is certainly improvable, but anyone who has played Cheep Falls at a top level will agree that this track gets frustrating to play pretty quickly. The main highlight and improvement point for this run is the lap 1 rapids, where I failed to get a super fast exit and lose a lot of time to my 154.001, which you can watch the Ghost catch up in my live reaction on this very channel. It doesn't feel like I did anything that much differently, but because I'm not in the right position with the right direction and momentum, the water just decides to not be very favorable. Outside of this spot, the other main area for improvement here lies in the coin strategy. This 153.881 does a 900 coin strategy, while an optimal coin strategy will ultimately be a 1020. On lap 1, this coin on the rock after the shroom can be grabbed quickly, and on lap 2, this coin at the temple can be grabbed as well. The rock coin, as we call it, is unfortunately highly unpredictable, and landing on the proper rock face ultimately comes down to QM, which stands for quantized movement, not quantum mechanics. We don't really have time for a full explanation right now, but the TLDR is that since the game runs in frames, movement is done by teleporting the cart from one position to the next via math, and that moving at different velocities will put the cart in favorable or unfavorable positions. Let me know if I should make a more detailed video about QM at some point in the future. The temple coin is much easier to obtain, but it required me to alter how I was doing the dirt rail Nisk setup beforehand, and I knew I didn't need the coin to sub, so I ignored it. Ultimately, I would contend that my 881 is the stronger of these two runs, not simply just because it's faster, but because there are fewer mistakes in it as well. The only glaring weaknesses of the 881 are the 900 coin strategy as mentioned, not getting a good rapids on lap 1, and getting a wide exit out of the phantom trick on lap 2. As for the 001, starting the drift after the bridge didn't go perfectly smoothly, in part due to not getting a left air trick before landing, which cost me some time. Additionally, the lap 2 Tarzan was good but not great, as I got shoved down by the second branch, making me drive over more of the off-road when landing. Overall, I am very happy with where this track stands currently. The best known splits for the 900 coin strategy give a 153.696, while the 910 coin best known splits sum to a 153.660. Getting a sufficiently perfect run and implementing the missing coins will come with time, but I am more than happy to set my controller down here for a while before addressing them. June 4th proved to be a very busy day in the world record scene, as Australian player Optic improved the previous world record on Sky High Sundae by British player Jamie by 73 milliseconds with a time of 152.758. This is the first run to implement the 1550 coin strategy, a shift from the 1640 coin strategy employed by Jamie. Optic skips the old coin 7, opting for a tight line instead. As a result of being down a coin, the 20th coin collected on the track is now the second coin at the end of the pink path after the hill, on lap 2. Along with that, Optic is the first player to implement the new hill route on lap 2, which is faster due to needing the coins from the yellow path in order to reach 20 coins. This is also why it's only done on lap 2 and not again on lap 3. Optic says that she gained an interest in trying these strategy changes after Canadian player McGlowsticks chatted with her about trying this new coin strat, which McGlowsticks developed. McGlowsticks has dedicated an absolute dump truck load of time into Sky High Sundae and has become a very knowledgeable player on the track, despite never having yet claimed a world record for himself. Optic mentions that after seeing McGlowsticks' splits and paces, she became quite intrigued and started trying it for herself, and while doing so, remembered that the hill skip had been posted in the Strat Discovery channel in the time trial server and had not yet been implemented, so she decided to try it out. According to Optic, the hill skip saves about 50 milliseconds, and McGlowsticks adds that his coin strat matches Jamie's former world record through lap 2 without the charge jump at the beginning of the second lap, nor any ramp skips at the end of the lap, resulting in an additional estimated time save of 0.1. Overall, this brings the time save from strat innovations up to about 150 milliseconds over the course of the run. With this being the case, clearly there is still some room for improvement here, given that Optic's time only lowered the world record by about half that amount. It will be neat to see how much farther this track goes with the theoretical room for improvement still on the table, but for now, this is where Sky High Sundae stands. I also want to highlight the landing for the shroom. This is by far one of the most frustrating parts of playing this course at a top level, even beyond the number of crazy stunts that you need to pull off in order to compete here. Pay close attention to the way the road is shaped where the cart lands from the shroom. For some reason, Mario Kart World is programmed in such a way that, if you land from a great enough height onto a surface that is sloped upwards, the game will kill some of your speed upon landing and force the cart to reaccelerate up to top speed. In comparison, landing on level ground does not have this effect and will permit the car to continue at full speed without any sort of slowdown. Naturally, this means that runners want to land earlier on the flat part of the track. The problem with this is that it is very hard. At this point, the cart is traveling very quickly due to shroom usage, and as such, makes it extremely easy to get too much height off the chocolate. The best way to mitigate this is to take the shroom as tight as possible, starting to hang some of the cart's wheels off the edge, and making the cart tilt towards the edge. However, this is not always possible. The beginning of the chocolate can cause the cart to get a seemingly random air pocket that I'm sure is controllable with the right QM, but with this sequence moving so rapidly, it's likely near impossible for humans to find a consistently good setup to eliminate the airtime while still being fast. This entry is ultimately what frustrates so many runners on this course and can stall progress for a long time. Ultimately, someone will decide that they truly want to claim the sky-high Sundae record for themselves and will power through this obstacle, but it's understandably frustrating for runners in the meantime. Optic shares that she spent about a week experimenting with the newly implemented strategies discussed earlier, so it's far from impossible for someone else to come and take the reins should Optic decide not to return here. The current best known splits total a 152.526. Congratulations on your world record here this month, Optic. Staying in the cold region of the world a little longer, on June 5th, Spanish player Mikel improved his own world record on DK Pass by a whopping 0.4 of a second with a time of 1:57.865, blowing the 1:58 second barrier out of the water. Mikel starts his comments by claiming that it's the best world record he's ever gotten on this track, and only his 6th finished run using the new strategies surrounding the Tanuki rail. Mikel provided some calculations about the likelihood of finishing a run here. He estimates that he hits the new strats about 40% of the time, which results in about a 6.5% chance of finishing a 3-for-3 run, disregarding other possible fails like the wall nisk and the shroom. With those factored in, the chance of finishing drops even more. As a result, he's really glad that he improved the world record by as much as he did, considering how painful it is to fail 2/3 of his paces on average to, quote, a stupid phantom trick which is RNG. Mikel explains that the angle of the bike matters a ton when trying to get this phantom trick. The bike can take on a variety of angles when landing from the rail before the tree section, with Mikel clarifying that getting the phantom trick is only possible when the bike is inclined significantly enough. If the bike lands too parallel to the ground, getting the phantom trick is impossible. Based on the success rate that Mikel shared earlier, it's easy to see why DK Pass can be extremely frustrating to play. Having so many of your runs and paces come down to something that feels like a weighted coin flip against you can definitely make players' patience run thin. Not to mention the other places around the course that can cause resets as well, mainly the walled ride nisk and the shroom as mentioned. Mikel claims that the only main weakness of his run is the lap 2 shroom, which he chalks up to, quote, just bad RNG. He asserts that lap 1 is very strong, and that lap 3 is just 1 millisecond behind the best known split. The best known splits currently add up to a 1:57.686, which strengthens Mikel's claim that this run will be very difficult to beat. Not impossible, as verified by the best known splits, but certainly challenging. DK Pass is a super interesting specimen in that it's undergone drastic strategy changes over the course of the past year. What started out as a heavyweight track transitioned into a lightweight course once the wall ride nisk and the old tree strategy was found. Some wider coins were added in later down the line, and now we have this new rail strategy known as the Tanuki rail, followed by the updated trees method that uses the rail from the terrain park. Mikel has been a top player here for many months now, and seeing such a strong time here is well deserved for a player of his caliber. Congratulations on your world record here this month. On June 6th, Japanese player Nugget claimed his first world record on Salty Salty Speedway, defeating Australian player Optic by 80 milliseconds with a time of 1:54.534. Unfortunately, I don't speak Japanese, and I don't know if Nugget speaks English, but fortunately, Optic was gracious enough to provide a little bit of insight on Nugget's run. Optic states that Nugget's run is fairly clean overall, with its biggest flaw being a weak lap 1. Laps 2 and 3 are solid according to Optic. Overall, the whole run doesn't have any major mistakes, but lap 1 particularly loses out to some unoptimized driving. I can definitely see Optic's point here, as I myself was playing this track for a new PB recently, and noticed that I was able to keep up with Nugget on my best lap 1s after only playing the track for a little less than a week with the Toadette strategies. Being able to contend with a world record pace lap is not something I expected myself to be able to do with much less practice in comparison. Of course, Nugget would pull away in laps 2 and 3, which aligns with Optic's analysis that laps 2 and 3 are stronger from Nugget. If there's anything major to watch for on this track, I cannot stress enough how infuriating the shroom into the triple trick on the rail can be. This maneuver feels more difficult than the average strategy due to the variability in the approach. Since the approach is from a glider, there are far more bike positions and angles to react to when attempting the shroom, especially if you have some trouble keeping a consistent line while gliding. The timing of the tricks is also incredibly precise, as tricking too early or too late can punch a one-way ticket to the out-of-bounds plane on the right. Getting the third trick too early can also make the bike miss attaching back to the rail entirely, instead slamming face first into this pole and landing in the water, which loses close to half a second, if not more. What's more is that even if you nail all 3 right tricks every lap, there is a chance that the bench can get knocked over and disappear for the rest of the run, similar to the first rail on Cheep Falls. It does not respawn until you click restart. I bring all this up so you all can get a better picture of how impressive world record runs on this track really are. Of course there are other difficult areas of the lap, but this shroom still proves to be a common reset point due to the precision required. To wrap up here, the best known splits for this track sum to a 154.360. It's hard to believe that Salty Speedway has become this optimized after the strategy revolution that happened here in December, that switched the combo from Bowser Real Racer to Toadette Mach Rocket. Wild how 7 months ago doesn't even feel that far away, and yet here we are. I'm not aware of any new strategies being cooked up for this run, so future improvements will likely be more optimization oriented. Congratulations on your record here this month, Nugget. Next up, we arrive at Toad's Factory, where Japanese player Arisugawa improved their own world records by 12 milliseconds, bringing their time down to a 151.172. Arisugawa is difficult to contact at the moment, but fortunately I was able to reach out to American player Pepe, who is currently 3rd worldwide here and was able to provide some excellent insight for this video. Pepe initiates his comments by affirming that Arisugawa's run is very strong for the current strategies, pointing out that lap 2 is particularly strong, being only 15 milliseconds off the best known split. This is particularly impressive on a track which Pepe states suffers from a lot of luck. Pepe identifies 2 major locations heavily influenced by luck. The first is the trick on the curb after landing from the boost panel, commonly referred to as curb stomp. Pepe explains that the success rate for this trick sits at around 40% only, and if you miss it then your run is instantly dead, as the curb stomp saves about 0.2 per lap. Pepe concludes his thoughts for the curb stomp saying that this inconsistency makes Toad's Factory very unfun to play, which as a result leads to extended record droughts. And honestly, this is so valid. Like on DK Pass, knowing that every run has essentially a 6.4% chance of survival without any meaningful control over the outcome can make pouring your time and effort into a track like this super unmotivating, so huge props to the players that can find the patience and stamina to endure a grind like this. The second major lucky spot is actually a time save that is yet to be performed in a world record, being a phantom trick at the end of the conveyor turn on laps 1 and 3. This phantom is not done on lap 2 due to the conveyor cycles. On lap 1, the inside conveyor is changing from backwards to forwards, and on lap 3, the conveyor travels forwards the whole time. This is in contrast to lap 2, where the inside conveyor travels backwards the whole time, so swinging wide to get the phantom trick on lap 2 involves driving on a conveyor moving in the opposite direction, which would lose too much time and defeat the purpose of going for the phantom trick in the first place. Pepe gets this 2 for 2 in his 3rd worldwide time, which he estimates saves somewhere in the range of 100 to 150 milliseconds per lap if done well, meaning a theoretical overall time save of 2 to 3/10. Unfortunately, Pepe estimates his success with this phantom to hover around 40 to 50%, only adding to the frustration when playing Toad's Factory at the highest level. This is very tragic to hear, and means that after doing the math, every single run on Toad's Factory has only a 1 to 1.5% chance of survival. What's more, Pepe goes even further to explain that, even if these time saves are implemented successfully at record pace, there are other possible problems on lap 3 which would make achieving a sub 151 rather complicated. Pepe shares a comment made by Arisugawa, which was forwarded by Optic, clarifying that a super fast pace into the shroom on lap 3 forces a wide line afterwards to avoid the bulldozer, which loses about 50 milliseconds. The other possible problem point on lap 3 is that incredibly fast paces risk being too fast to collect coin 12, which would result in being down a coin for half a lap, leading to a large time loss. While a sub 151 might be far from straightforward to achieve here, I have no doubt that players will find a way to make it happen at some point. Despite how inconsistent this track might be to play, which is quite sad considering how much of a fan favorite Toad's Factory is, the reality is that 1 year into the game's lifespan is too short to draw any significant long-standing conclusions. It may take a long time, as Pepe highlighted earlier, but I think there's too much left in the kitchen to abandon the idea of a 150 here in the future. As it stands, Arisugawa's run is quite strong, and who knows how long this record will stand for. The best known splits currently yield a 151.047, but as mentioned, I would expect that total to decrease over the coming months and years. Congratulations on your record here this month, Arisugawa, and huge thanks once again to Pepe for providing such incredible insight. Making our way over to Dry Bones Burnout now, American player Kryn improved his own world record twice during this month. First, Kryn improved by 11 milliseconds on June 8th to a 205.593, marking this run as the first 205.5 on the track. 11 days later, Kryn improved by another 29 milliseconds, completing a 205.564. Kryn opens his comments by explaining that the charge jump wall detach strategy towards the end of the lap is the primary gatekeeper to getting good times here. Kryn details that getting 3 good ones can give you a huge advantage due to not having to turn at all when driving towards the wall afterwards. There's also a version with a busted detach called Lucky Nisk, but according to Kryn, getting it is like rolling 777s at a slot machine, and will likely represent the endgame of this track. We still don't yet know how this wall detach works fully, which contributes to its randomness, but the setup used is serviceable enough to get runs on the board. I've definitely felt the randomness of the strategy when trying to learn it myself. The timing of the air trick seems to be the greatest factor in determining how good your detach is, but again, this is only a theory since we don't fully understand why the sequence gives the variance it does. Fortunately, we're not at the point of needing 3-for-3 Lucky Nisks yet. Something we do have a better understanding of is Candle Chaos, which Kryn shares saves around 0.1 per lap if done correctly. You first want to nosedive in the glider to land early, timing a hop just before the glider deactivates so that you can charge a charge jump at full speed. Release a left roll at the end of the shadow on the ramp. Kryn says that if done well, then no correctional air tricks are needed to avoid touching the side of the skull, but not to be afraid of doing one if you find you went too tight. Doing an air trick will delay the boost when landing on the candle, which of course is slower, but also safer. Finally, hold left the rest of the way until landing from the candle trick, making sure to trick late off the candle so as to avoid catching the rail. Huge thanks to Kryn for giving this tutorial for Candle Chaos, and I hope that including it will help elevate the overall level of play here. I want to highlight the very beginning one more time, as the timing of the hop is paramount. Mario Kart World doesn't like starting charge jumps while the kart's wings are still out, so timing the hop such that it's late enough to let the wings fold in while still being in time for Candle Chaos will take some practice. As for the runs themselves, Kryn notes that the 593 got a bit too much air off the opening ramp trick on lap 1. The aim is to get just the right amount of airtime off the ramp to enable a double air trick that will delay the boost timing, which allows a boosted trick off the dirt immediately afterwards. Based on this information, while Kryn doesn't say this explicitly, we can conclude that getting too much air is slow due to unnecessary airtime, and getting too little air prevents the double air trick, meaning no delayed boost. Kryn gets too much air here again on lap 2, as well as a bad detach towards the end of the lap. As for lap 3, Kryn highlights getting too much airtime on the ending wall ride jump. This wall ride jump is actually what led to the development of the new version of the shroom first seen in the 564 without the hop. Kryn and American player Mika wanted to see if they could get the charge jump out sooner so that they could use more of the boost before crossing the finish line, as Kryn points out that Rocky Wrench is still boosting for a significant amount of time after finishing the 593. Missing this no-trick version is not the end of the world though, as Kryn refers to it as a quote very small optimization, which also quote only matters the most on lap 3, to maximize boost distribution. On a more general note, Kryn states that the wall ride strat is good for consistency, and doesn't notice a significant speed difference versus the old off-road trick strategy, implying that both are viable. Kryn touches on his 564 very briefly, classifying the run as quote pretty solid, with the only major improvement spot being fishing for better or lucky detaches on laps 1 and 2, but also writes that task off as mentally exhausting. And I don't blame him, given that we've already spent enough time in this video discussing how little we know about the strategy. Overall, Kryn and the rest of the top players here have put lots of hard work into squeezing time out of this track, and it's awesome to hear about what gave them these new ideas. Kryn is slowly pushing very close to the best known splits, which give a time of 205.412. Any future improvements will be hard to come by with the current record this close to the sum of best, so it'll be interesting to observe how players will proceed from here. Congratulations on your records here this month, Kryn, and good luck with future attempts. And now, this is probably the moment you've all been waiting for. Dino Jungle saw an incredible 9 world records set over the span of 7 days, so let's get right to work at getting through these. Starting on June 11th, Australian player Panda improved the previous world record held by Spanish player Alberto by 2 milliseconds with a 144.309. The next day, Panda improved by another 5 milliseconds, bringing the time down to a 144.304. Later that same day, American player Zay claimed his first record on the track with a 144.300, improving Panda's time by just 4 milliseconds. The very next day, Panda made a statement by improving 3 times, first reclaiming the world record back from Zay with an improvement of 9 milliseconds to a 144.291, setting the first 144.2 on the track. Panda then improved by another 6 milliseconds to a 144.285, and then by another 7 milliseconds to a 144.278. 2 days later, on June 15th, Panda found another 6 millisecond improvement, resulting in a 144.272. The following day, Alberto would reclaim his lost record, leapfrogging Panda by 24 milliseconds with a time of 144.248. Finally, the very next day, Panda would reclaim Dino Dino Jungle from Alberto just like at the beginning of this week-long period, improving the world record by 33 milliseconds to a 144.215. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to reach out to Panda, so I don't have comments from him, but I do have comments from Zay and Alberto, so let's start by reviewing those first. Starting with Zay's 144.300, he shares that he thinks the run is actually solid outside of lap 3. Zay missed a fast wall ride on lap 3 at the egg, leaving him with a bad line after leaving the wall, making him unable to get out a mini turbo trick into the subsequent dinosaur's back. Zay speculates that this lost around 60 to 75 milliseconds, which totals to about 4 frames. Overall, Zay concludes by saying that he was satisfied with the run after salvaging it after that failed mini turbo trick. I cannot emphasize this time loss margin enough, and I'm glad Zay chose to point out something that may otherwise seem so small. In fact, Alberto also pointed this out in his comments to me as a location that is particularly difficult to optimize on this track, as well as taking the last turn optimally for all 3 laps. In order to try to provide some sort of my own analysis for Dino Dino Jungle, since I haven't invested too much time into the track myself, I ended up running a 9-way comparison between all the June world records here, which I'll link in the description, and found that time variance margins this small really do define how good a run is here. All 9 of these runs reach lap 2 within 3 frames, or 50 milliseconds, of each other, and all 9 of these runs reach lap 3 within 5 frames, or 83 milliseconds, of each other. It's wild to think that a track with this many obstacles and moving parts has become optimized to this scale. This is a level of optimization that, to use an example from another Mario Kart game, I might expect from a track like SNES Mario Circuit 3 in Mario Kart Wii, which is known in that game for being completely flat, making every time gain and loss come solely down to the player's driving. The best known splits here currently total a 144.140, which is less than 100 milliseconds ahead of Panda's 215. Again, seeing this phenomenon occurring on Dino Dino Jungle of all courses is wildly impressive. Huge kudos to Zay, Alberto, and Panda for grinding down such a demanding course. However, it is also for this reason that pointing out every minute little difference for a recap like this one becomes highly impractical, so I will unfortunately have to simply chalk my explanation here up to that the faster runs here made fewer of these minor frame-losing mistakes over the course of the run overall. I can, however, show one such example of an instance. This is the trick sequence after the shroom on lap 1 from Panda's 215. And this is the trick sequence after the shroom on lap 1 from Alberto's 248. Did you notice the difference? It all comes down to when the cart lands from leaving the laboratory. Panda's 215 lands much farther back on the grading compared to Alberto's 248. This landing difference is by 6 frames, only slightly larger than the time loss mentioned earlier by Zay. Due to this trick being quickly chained into a boost panel, it doesn't appear that this results in a 6-frame time loss for Panda, but I can confirm that when looking at all 9 runs side by side, the 215 is only in the middle of the pack when it comes to reaching that boost panel, so it certainly appears that Panda lost some time here no matter how small. Once again, I'm simply mind blown after attempting to analyze that comparison, and by the effort put up by all 3 of these players here. Before wrapping up, let's move over to the rest of Alberto's comments surrounding his 144.248. Alberto says that he is glad to have set another world record in this game after many months, and that he remains rather satisfied with his run despite it only lasting at the top of the leaderboards for a day. Alberto adds that he thinks all 3 laps are fairly consistent, with the only exception possibly being the second half of lap 3, as it was the fastest pace he had been on by a significant margin. Alberto concludes by sharing his surprise at coming up with such a high-quality run after just a few shorter sessions in the midst of dealing with university final exams. I also know that Alberto has been returning to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe time trials as well within the past weeks, so juggling all 3 of these endeavors is no small feat. Huge congratulations again on your world record here this month, Alberto, and congratulations to Zay and Panda as well for your efforts and accomplishments here this month. Our next point of interest this month is Crown City, where German player Lean set his first 4 world records here this month. On June 12th, Lean would claim the world record from longtime American record holder Pluto with a time of 203.622, improving Pluto's time by 26 milliseconds. On the same day, Lean found a more sizable 91 millisecond improvement, clocking in at a 203.531. The next day, Lean would improve again by 44 milliseconds to a 203.487. Lastly, the day after that, Lean improved one more time by 77 milliseconds to a 203.410. Starting with the 622, Lean opens his comments by admitting that this run felt, quote, really bad, so he was not nervous at all. Lean also reports that he failed world record paces here upwards of 100 times, so he was very proud to finally close out a run here, even if he knew it was improvable. He adds that he was also proud to have taken down Pluto's long-standing reign on this course, which I totally understand. Pluto has been pioneering and innovating on Crown City since nearly day one, so making your mark on a track that's been dominated by one main player for so long carries a lot of pride with the accomplishment. Moving forward to the 531, Lean doesn't have much to comment on here other than that this run had a crazy pace into Section 3, being a 792 Section 1 into a 403 Section 2. Onto the 487 now, Lean admits that this run could be much better if he had gotten the left trick off the rail at the final Nisk a little earlier. When watching this run back, how late the trick is here is quite noticeable, especially when opting to forgo the extra rail trick before the left roll. Fortunately, that is not where this month's story ends, as Lean starts his comments for his 410 spotlighting the lap 1, which clocked in at an impressive 52.638. When Lean saw the split, he admitted that, quote, I told myself it's already good and I'm okay with it when I fail. However, clearly, Lean did not fail, and evidently it was still good enough to be on world record pace even when missing an important edge trick in Section 2. Lean closes his comments by adding that the 410 felt, quote, so bad, and that his long-term goal is to secure a .1 here. Saving that much time will certainly prove to be quite challenging, but with the mistakes that Lean highlighted in his feedback, I agree that it's a reasonable goal, even if it may feel a bit ambitious. Lean once again opted to forgo the rail trick after the whale, which is the name for the wall detach off the rail after the Section 3 shrooms, which, in tandem with missing the lap 2 edge trick, leaves the door wide open for improvement. The 410 in particular is a very important run in the game's history, as it is also the first world record to beat the glitch world record set here by Pluto, a 203.432, before the controller disconnect abuse glitch was removed from the game in version 1.4.1. This glitch run is the one which received what was essentially a 5-second head start by getting pushed forwards by cars for somewhere around 21 hours. Records in this category would have eventually become more optimized if the glitch had remained in the game, and even for driving standards at the time, this run was fairly weak, but with the low frequency at which players were even able to attempt this category, a 1-second lead over the no glitch record at the time definitely sufficed. Knowing that now we're at a point with strategy developments and driving that is capable of defeating a glitch run is absolutely incredible, and even if Lean's 410 isn't perfect, I contend that he should be quite proud of this run for reaching this incredible milestone. The last things to highlight on Crown City are the changes made to the alleyway and the shroom exit in Section 1. Lean found charging a charge jump onto the left wall and then jumping from the wall to the red rail to be faster than simply driving straight and charge jumping directly onto the rail. This time save is rather small, but every time save is significant at the topmost level. However, it's quite powerful when combined with the change to the shroom exit, which involves getting a trick off this pole instead of landing on top of the wall. Tricking off this pole grants higher speed when traveling through the air, and importantly, makes the charge jump onto the next rail boosted, whereas it wasn't before. The trick boost needs to be delayed slightly in order to perform this, which Lean accomplishes with a frame-perfect hop on landing, but the payoff for faster airspeed from the charge jump is absolutely worth it. This strategy, combined with the alleyway charge jump, is enough to guarantee a low bounce off the blue car before the first divider on the final straight of the section, which only adds to the total time save found here. All in all, the combination of these strategy changes looks to save about 0.2. Good laps driven here before these strategies were implemented this month hovered around the 52.950 mark, whereas Lean's lap 1s from his records this month average out to a 52.769. The best known splits here give a 203.083, so we'll definitely see in the coming months how much farther these strategies will get pushed. Congratulations Lean on your records here this month, and good luck with your future endeavors here. Headed south once again, we find ourselves at Koopa Troopa Beach, where we saw 2 record improvements this past month. Starting on June 12th, German player Lean reclaimed the record from Spanish player Alberto by 91 milliseconds, with a time of 126.477. Then, on June 20th, Australian player Optic claimed the record by a hefty 168 milliseconds, driving a 126.309. Starting with Lean's 477, Lean says that this run came seemingly out of nowhere. At around 1 in the morning, while on a call with fellow German player Sandwich Crafter, Sandwich Crafter suggested that Lean play some Koopa Troopa Beach for about 15 minutes or so before Lean left to go to sleep. Lean decided he might as well, and about 20 minutes later, he turned up with this 91 millisecond improvement over Alberto. Lean has proven himself to be a strong player ever since the game's release, and building experience from playing so many courses at a high or even top level can certainly lead to instances like this. Sometimes committing to only a very short session or driving well while warming up for the day can relieve some of the mental pressure that speedrunners can place on themselves, allowing them to simply play the game normally without any sort of expectations placed on their play. The expectation going into a warm-up session or a super short stint is that you probably won't come out of it with anything notable, which turns every improvement set during one of these periods into a pleasant surprise. Now moving to Optics 309, Optics starts by sharing that chatting with German player King Green, who has contributed heavily to the technical and analytical side of strat discovery and optimization, led to King Green running his combo calculator on Koopa Troopa Beach and reported back that he believed that Charge and Chuck on the Dread Sled should be an estimated 0.2 seconds or more faster than Bowser on the Real Racer. Hearing this, Optic got to work practicing the Nisk with the Charge and Chuck combo, but wasn't getting anything without drifting before the yellow ramp. Optic took the liberty to swap to Pokey, with her thinking being that Pokey's extra water handling would enable an easier Nisk setup and thus successful Nisks altogether. This adjustment worked for Optic, so she continued to play the track with Pokey, doing 5 for 5 Nisk attempts for world record here, eventually succeeding after many lap 5 fails. Analyses like this one are why I love where the game is right now, just over a year after release. This feels like a golden age for the game. Players know enough about the game now to start making smarter optimizations, but simultaneously haven't solved the game, which enables discovery of new fast strategies and combo switches. I think this phase could last for a long time in Mario Kart World, even upwards of a few years. The deep mechanics and freedom of movement simply provide too many options for a game like this to become static very quickly. And it's off the backs of intelligent minds like King Green and capable players like Optic to help push the game further and further towards perfect optimization. And speaking of perfect optimization, Optics 309 is the first run to beat American player Radiant Glow's 126.311, which was quickly identified as a TAS and removed from the world record history. Defeating a tool-assisted run is an incredible accomplishment, which not only emphasizes the strength of Optic's run, but also the sheer depth of Mario Kart World's mechanics. Optic shares that this track mainly comes down to how well the Nisk is performed on all 5 laps. Optic has classified 3 different varieties of the Nisk, all of which depend on the wall attachment. The first and most common is the low Nisk, which attaches to the wall at a decent height and lands early in the off-road. Optic elaborates that this version is actually fast for shroom laps, since it helps tighten the line for the shroom on the next turn. The second kind of Nisk is a high Nisk, and the one that Optic reports is ideal for a shroomless lap. This version grips the wall earlier and higher up than the low Nisk, letting the cart completely skip the off-road, which Optic states saves nearly 0.1. Optic gets this version on lap 4 of her run, but she says that it ultimately cost her nearly 0.2 on her shroomless laps, because lap 4 was not a shroomless lap for her. The time save is not nearly as large for a shroom lap, but was still enough to make this lap 4 a best known split. The final type of Nisk is similar to the high Nisk, but with a difference of landing in the off-road instead of on the sand. Optic says that this Nisk, quote, has no purpose, but also concedes that, thankfully, this version is on the rare side. As mentioned on some of the other tracks thus far, I find it super interesting to learn about all the ins and outs of how much variability lies within a run, especially with a strat like this. Huge thanks to Optic for going into this level of depth on this shortcut. Hopefully it will lead to some competition here in the coming months, as this detailed explanation highlights how much more time there is to save on this track. The best known splits here sum to a 125.947. Congratulations to both Lean and Optic on your world records on Koopa Troopa Beach this month. Going from the hot sun straight back to the cold winter sky, on June 16th, Spanish player Mikel set a new world record on Starview Peak with a time of 2:10.946, reclaiming the track from American player Zay by just 8 milliseconds. Mikel starts by saying that this run is actually quite improvable. Kind of like his DK Pass run which we discussed earlier, it's lap 2 that Mikel cites as the major time loss here, stating that the rail recovery out of the Nisk was bad. Mikel's run gets a low end of rail trick after landing from the Nisk, which activates the trick boost much earlier since the cart touches the ground sooner. The optimal outcome is getting a high end of rail trick, which helps preserve speed from the landing of the Nisk and distributes the boosts better. Essentially what this all means is that a higher end of rail trick keeps the cart traveling at the higher top speed for longer, since it extends the time spent in a boost. We can compare this to Mikel's recovery on lap 3, which he adds is so good that he almost failed to start the drift afterwards, as seen by the more tweaky movement that DK makes. Putting them side by side more clearly shows how much better the boost distribution is with the high end of rail trick as opposed to the low one. Mikkel also adds that rail recoveries are what differentiates good runs from great ones on this track, as there seems to be an RNG element of whether the rail recovery will save an extra few frames each lap. Mikkel states that he's driven laps that are 25 to 50 milliseconds faster than he expected because, quote, the rail decided to. Mikkel adds that this rail RNG can be consistently diminished by playing a lighter weight class character like Pokey, but later confirmed that, after some testing, he believes Pokey is unfortunately no longer viable at world record level. Despite this, he still recommends anyone learning the track for worldwide tops to use Pokey, as that weight class gave Mikkel the best in his consistency. In fact, Mikkel was playing Pokey more seriously before setting this time until French player Exororik suggested swapping back to DK, since they were getting free good laps with the character themselves. Unfortunately, I'm writing this after major strat developments happened here at the beginning of July due to patch 1.7.0, so I don't have accurate best known splits for these strategies, but what I can infer from Mikkel's opening comments is that he still believed that Starview Peak had a decent amount of gas left in the tank even without any changes. The character difference is something noteworthy in my opinion, as we've seen many tracks in this game flip between heavyweights and middleweights, or at the very least have a decently viable middleweight counterpart. Courses like Dino Jungle, Moo Moo Meadows, Desert Hills, and Bones Burnout come to mind. It's interesting to hear what the advantages and disadvantages of each are, with the frequent outcome being that the middleweight combo is more user-friendly, while the heavyweight combo is faster. As mentioned earlier, major strategy changes have altered the way Starview Peak will be played in the future, but, spoiler alert, we'll have plenty of time to talk about them when we return to this track for the July recap. Congratulations on your world record here this month, Mikkel, and good luck on your future endeavors here when you inevitably return to tackle this track with the new strategies. We now make our way over to Boo Cinema, where American player JBoneX improved his own world record by a massive 1 millisecond, setting a time of 203.755 on June 18th. JBone begins his comments by saying that he was not happy with this improvement, especially since it was by only 1 millisecond. JBone admits that he was expecting a much better time given how long he's been grinding the track for, but he also does concede that the run is still strong, mainly because of how brutal Boo Cinema is to play. I've sunk enough time into Boo Cinema to start to understand what JBone means when he says this. Take the shroom as a primary example. There are numerous ways the shroom can go wrong. You can slide into the little alcove, which instantly kills your attempt. You can grip the corner of the alcove in the wall, which turns the cart almost completely upward, which instantly kills your attempt. You can grip the rail but hit the fence in a way that makes you lose all your speed, which instantly kills your attempt. It also doesn't help that you're driving at shroom speed, making any already small windows even smaller. The end result is feeling you're just throwing darts at a dartboard and hoping you'll hit a triple 20 or a bullseye. So, as is communicated by JBone's sentiment, every improvement here is inevitably appreciated, even if it has glaring flaws. Returning now to JBone's comments, JBone says that he drew inspiration from watching Zay's Ghost do the charge jump ramp into the silver screen on the left side lap 1 and on the right side on laps 2 and 3. JBone says he adapted to this method of running about half an hour before setting this run, and he's glad he did so since JBone finds the charge jump harder on the left side when compared to the right side. JBone adds that this methodology is preferred also because fails on the right side of the ramp, as seen in his lap 3, are easier to save in order to clutch out a run. With how easy it is to fail here, as already established, any saves here are welcome. The final advantage of doing one charge jump on the left and two on the right is that it more naturally aligns with the preferred lines out of the previous turn on each lap, so setting up for the ramp is quite convenient. All of these changes make a lot of sense to me, and I'm surprised this change wasn't made earlier, given how many advantages it provides. At the very least, I'm glad that it has made its way into a record now, and I see this being the preferred method for tackling this section for a long time. JBone's comments continue, asserting that the pace of this run was super strong through the first 2 laps, especially on lap 2 due to getting the phantom trick off the second reel before the glider skip. JBone finds this hilarious as he's gotten this phantom trick in his past 2 records on complete accident. While the time save is nice, JBone also emphasizes that racing this ghost going forward will be a pain because it has a stronger pace than his prior record, which messes with his preference of being ahead when trying to beat it. On top of this, JBone adds that it hurts even more that he failed the charge jump ramp on lap 3, since he says all 3 of his shrooms were strong, and he hit the rail perfectly too. Like mentioned before, ultimately JBone wishes this improvement was better, but he does recognize its strengths. He currently plans to take a break until he gets hungry to improve again, with his long-term goal being to shave 300 milliseconds off his time, assuming he gets at least one lucky cut. J-Bone closes his thoughts stating that his best known pace is a 122.4 into lap 3, so he's hoping to obtain a run with a pace that good soon, but finding motivation after a 1 millisecond improvement is proving difficult, which is completely fair, especially for the kind of pace that this run was on. I also hope that J-Bone is able to pick up the track again soon, and deliver a run which is more representative of his efforts here as well as the communities at large. The best known splits total at 203.045, although this sum is a tad misleading due to the first real switching directions on record pace during lap 3. Congratulations on your record here this month, J-Bone, and good luck with your future attempts. Speaking of 1 millisecond improvements, British player Spezzy continued his endeavors on Great Question Block Ruins this month by beginning with a 1 millisecond improvement over his own world record, setting a time of 201.901 on June 19th. However, Spezzy did not stop there. 3 days later, Spezzy finally found a bit of a larger cut, improving by 163 milliseconds to bring his time down to a 201.738. Spezzy comments that the 901 is probably the most underwhelming world record he's ever driven, and that all it really did was show him how much more potential he had for improvements on this track. Spezzy pointed out that this run completely misses the lap 2 wall ride trick without getting the rightmost coin, which should have realistically been a reset for multiple reasons. Spezzy says that this lost about 0.2 compared to an optimal wall ride trick. It's mind-boggling to think that a run with a fail this big still ended up being a new world record, but as Spezzy already said, it shows how much more time there is to save here, with fixing this one mistake alone theoretically bringing the world record time down to a 201.7. Spezzy asserts that the 901 was mainly carried by a strong lap 1 and getting better at the snaking into laps 2 and 3 before the shroom, which is a brand new strat at the time he set his 902 former world record. Moving now to the 738, Spezzy opens by claiming that this run is a much better showcase of his abilities here, which I completely agree with. The lap 1 in this record is slightly slower than the one in the 901, but makes up for it with more consistent driving and hitting the wall ride 3 for 3, which Spezzy remarks has been an issue for him in prior records. It is worth noting, however, that Spezzy missed the rightmost coin after the wall ride in this run as well, so while it's not an insane amount, there is still some obvious time save to be had here. Spezzy adds that with the current strategies, a 201.5 or better is possible, but he's also considering adding in some more difficult tech, which could push the track down to the low 201 range or lower. The best known splits on this track currently yield a 201.590, so new tech would be mandatory in order to push the world record time here that low. Spezzy closes his thoughts by sharing that Great Question Block Ruins is still his favorite track in the game to time trial, and he does not foresee that changing anytime soon. As a player who also has the world record on my favorite track in the game, I can confidently say that that dedication pushes players like Spezzy and myself to start toying with annoying advanced tech. I was surprised to think that this course had that much farther to go, to which Spezzy responded that he's taking a much more long-term perspective when it comes to world record improvements in the game as a whole. He compared Mario Kart World to older titles in the franchise, contrasting how lenient World still is with the mistakes players can make with the reality that losing 2 frames on a single turn is reset-worthy in older, more optimized games. Spezzy later shared that he finds player mentality as a whole extremely fascinating, which he says for him can be enough of a motivator to play so that he can learn how he plays when feeling a certain way or during a certain period. Loving the learning process is another facet of Spezzy's game that makes him such a warrior on Great Question Block Ruins, and may also partly be inspiring him to implement the aforementioned difficult tech into his runs. While there are elements of pain and frustration with performing difficult tech that can cause players to reset even more than this game already makes them do, there's also a level of satisfaction and beauty that's achieved when highly motivated players squeeze every last bit of time save out of a track. I have no doubt that Spezzy will continue to pioneer this track to times that we never thought would be possible, and I'm excited to see him give it a crack at it when he decides to do so. Congratulations on your world records here this month, Spezzy, and good luck with your future endeavors. Our next stop this month is at Wario Shipyard, where French player Another improved his own world record 3 times. On June 23rd, Another returned after a long break to improve his time by 68 milliseconds to a 216.032. 4 days later, on June 27th, Another improved again to set the first 215 on the track, improving by 43 milliseconds with a time of 215.989. Finally, the next day, Another shaved off another 85 milliseconds with a time of 215.904. Another starts his comments by saying that he set his 216.032 only after 2 days coming back to the game after his break. He expected to take longer to de-rust, but, in Another's words, the stars aligned and he managed to clutch out this run, beating his old world record by 2/3 of a second. The run is good overall, he says, with the major weak point being a weak lap 2 more holistically. From the looks of it, the most obvious fails in the lap would be the missed wave trick after the water turn, and then also getting the subsequent shroom a little wide. This shroom can easily lose a lot of time if you don't get it properly, even though it might not look like much. And while going wide is obviously slow, it's even slower here due to how sharply the course is turning to the left. Now we move on to the 2:15.989, which is another's favorite record out of these bunch by far. He says that he wouldn't have ever dared to dream of reaching a 2:15 on this track before, but the sheer reality that he was the one to make it possible makes the moment very memorable for him. And to be honest, I understand the feeling completely. Taking my own experience on Cheep Falls as an example, there were points where driving a 153 seemed like a pipe dream, especially right when I was battling Pluto when the record hovered around a high 154. So finally reaching the sub-second barrier on Cheep felt like a huge relief, and it sounds like another feels the exact same way about finally reaching the sub-second barrier on Wario Shipyard. Huge congrats on the accomplishment here, especially since this track is far from straightforward to drive. Regarding the run itself, Another begins his comments by remarking that the wave trick fail after the boost ramp on lap 2 is entirely unintentional. Another explains that tricking as early as possible is ideal here, and he thinks he missed the trick this time due to inputting the trick too early. However, it ended up being relatively inconsequential, as the immediate time loss slowed him down for the water turn and allowed him to get the wave trick after the turn instead, balancing out the time lost. Another does not believe he would have gotten this latter wave trick if he had hit the former one. Outside of this one detail, Another asserts that this run is quite solid. All 3 laps are serviceable even if they aren't all incredible. He also points out that this is the first ever world record here with a 44-second lap 2, which is a very impressive split. Another claims that he could have stopped here but didn't since he remained hungry for improvements, and his efforts paid off with his 2:15.904, which he calls quote insane in all caps. Both the lap 1 and lap 2 were amazing, which caused the lap 3 to be quite stressful for Another, causing him to take some turns wider than usual and making some small fails. Upon inspection, his water turn in the lap looks to be a tad wide. One might also argue that missing the Super Mini Turbo on the sinking ship cost him time as well, but Another says that getting this Super Mini Turbo does not save time compared to just a regular Mini Turbo, meaning that there is no time loss here. All in all, he was still able to hold his nerves together to clutch a good enough lap 3 to close out the run. The best known splits here give a time of 2:15.532, but there is a known pace lock here as Another's best known pace gets stuck on it, which will make such a time harder to reach. The best known pace has a slower lap 1 than the best lap 1, so maybe getting a faster pace can help solve the issue, but sometimes the wave cycles can just be super mean. When asking Another about this, he says that the new lap 3 loses out significantly compared to the more standard lap 3, so we'll just have to wait and see. Congratulations Another on your record improvements here this month. The final track this month to see a world record improvement is Peach Beach, where on June 27th, Australian player Optic claimed her first world record on the track from Japanese player Arisugawa, improving the record by 30 milliseconds with a time of 140.109. The next day, Arisugawa reclaimed the record, sniping it by 3 milliseconds with a time of 140.106. Activity here started after American player Pluto began experimenting with charge jumps on the track because, quote, that's all I know. Pluto shares that he initially simply charge jumped once on the water in section 1 and got the water trick afterwards. However, when watching back the clip he took, he realized that it was highly likely possible to chain a boosted charge jump out of the water trick. It didn't take long for him to find the boosted charge jump quite consistent and also fast, calculating that it saved over 60 milliseconds when done properly. Pluto made some attempts here with the strategy but ultimately decided to share it with Optic, who, after setting some fast laps with it herself, determined to push for the world record and ultimately succeeded. Optic also did some experimenting with the buoy strat on section 3, aiming to get the double buoy version, which she found to be more consistent for her and slightly faster than the previous world records method. According to Optic, she was able to get some great paces into section 3 here, but the run she managed to close out actually had a subpar pace, which was redeemed by a new best known split section 3. Moving on now to Arisugawa's 140.106, Arisugawa's run actually aligns pretty closely with Optic's 109. Arisugawa adapted to the charge jump into the water trick into boosted charge jump strategy on section 1, as well as the double buoy version of the buoy strat in section 3. Arisugawa's pace is slightly better into section 3 than Optic's, improving on both lap 1 and lap 2, however lap 3 is understandably a bit slower considering Optic's section 3 was the best known split. Thanks to Mindscarp's hard work on the MK World Records YouTube channel, we can see that the lap 1s that Optic and Arisugawa achieved in these world records are still faster than Panda's and Arisugawa's older records before the boosted charge jump was found, but we can also see that the fastest lap 1 out of those prior world records came from Panda, clocking in at a 31.889. Arisugawa's current lap 1 only reaches a 31.842, which is less than 60 milliseconds. So, if Pluto's calculations are correct, then there is still a decent amount of time saves to be found in this split. Moreover, Arisugawa's 140.139, which Optic defeated this month, has the fastest Section 2 out of the last 3 world records here, beating Arisugawa's Section 2 in their current run by 75 milliseconds. Making these comparisons helps us see why Optic called the pace from her 109 subpar, and I have no doubt that she would say the same of Arisugawa's 106. Even without any additional strategy changes, a 139 is certainly feasible here with these 2 additions alone. Hard? Yes, of course, but absolutely possible. Ultimately, minor spoiler for next month, but patch 1.7.0 caused the Section 3 glider to be faster than before, so the best known splits don't perfectly encapsulate the limits of the world records here this month. As a result, I hope you look forward to next month, where we will return to this track to talk about the improvements made in July. Until then, congratulations to both Optic and Arisugawa on your world records on Peach Beach this month. And that's all of the world records from June 2026 for Mario Kart World. 271 world records have been set through the first half of 2026, which, for only 30 categories, is quite a healthy number. What's more, July got off to a really hot start as well, continuing the trend of the community steadily constructing a deeper and more complete understanding of the game. I'm really looking forward to what the rest of this year has in store for Mario Kart World Time Trials, and I'm even more excited to be recapping them with you all each month. This series is heavily inspired by Nmead's monthly time trial recap series for Mario Kart Wii, and Rod's Awokens and Friends monthly time trial recap series for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, so I hope to build this series into one which carries the torch for the current generation of Mario Kart time trials. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you want to get notified when these world record recaps drop. Also, leave a comment with suggestions for how I can improve this video format. I truly do want it to be the best it can be, and am open to any and all suggestions. With all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you back here next month to cover July's activity. Until then, take care.